Donors are people. They're an extremely important part of the mission, as important as the beneficiary. What we need in order for the donor to feel fulfilled and excited comes from people who are not on the development team. And therefore, they need to understand who the donor is, what the donor needs, what the donor would want to see and hear about, because 9 times out of 10, they're the ones gathering it.
Tina, welcome to the Sustainable Giving Podcast.
Thank you, Dave. It's great to be here.
I am so excited. You and I have known each other for, I won't say how many years, but a lot of years. But we had a couple years there where we would trade notes on LinkedIn occasionally. And we were able to reconnect just last year at a conference in DC. And it was so cool, Tina, because, and you know this, I told you this story, but I told a little bit of your story in my book. And so to actually get you live is just an honor.
Well, Dave, I feel honored to be here, and goodness that my story made your book. That's amazing. And glad to be a part of it because I am crazy about sustainable giving still to this day.
Absolutely. And I have quoted you on several occasions over the years. And so we'll get a little bit into your background as we go throughout the conversation. But for those who haven't met you, just how would you describe the work that you do today and what drew you into this space?
Yeah. So what I'm doing today is I'm acting as a consultant and an educator. Um, I love working with nonprofits. I love helping them have light bulb moments and feeling inspired and exhilarated to actually grow substantially their revenue, to see the joy of bringing in donors and not just bringing them in, but walking with them and making them insiders. And there's some teaching involved. We do a great fundraising masterclass, and there's some coaching and consulting that I'm doing.
That is so cool. And you do have more than a decade in the nonprofit sector, being in the trenches, doing the fundraising. And I want to make sure we talk about that, including at this little organization called International Justice Mission. If that's again for, yeah.
Excuse me. Before that, I was at ADRA International for many years. So yeah, there's a long history in the space.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, you've worked with some remarkable organizations. Speaking of that, like what's one personal or professional experience that has really shaped your view of fundraising?
Oh, goodness. When I was at International Justice Mission, I walked in and there was a very small sustainer program. And the more that I dug into it, the more that I got excited about the potential and the possibilities. I have an entrepreneurial spirit, just wherever I happen to be, I have that. And I began evangelizing on sustainers and talking to all the executives and saying, can you imagine how different it would be from year to year if 30% of our revenue was from sustainers? And I have to admit that for a very long time, I felt like a salmon swimming upstream. And I would literally visualize myself as a salmon swimming upstream. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is what I'm supposed to be. I'm salmon swimming.
I'm thinking like Dory, just keep swimming, just keep swimming.
Yes, very much so. But I was just like, they will catch the vision. They will catch it. I know they will.
That is so incredible. And we're going to talk more about that because you were really one of the early adopters in what I would call this kind of new era of subscription philanthropy, whatever you want to call it, subscription giving. And by the way, I'm not saying we're trying to turn our donors into consumers. We can talk about that. But this reality that, it used to be, and I've talked about this a lot, but the charities that did monthly giving well had to either be one-to-one sponsorship or a membership. They either had to provide some sort of direct benefit to donors. But for an organization like International Justice Mission, ADRA as well, it's not, the donor is not the beneficiary. And so what does it look like if you can't literally pair up donors with beneficiaries one to one, and you don't provide benefits to them? Why would they give monthly? Well, it turns out there's this subscription economy thing.
Well, if I could back up just a little, I would say that I think that sometimes nonprofits forget that they are two businesses under one governance structure.
Talk about that.
Yeah. So the two businesses are being equally brilliant at serving your client or beneficiary and serving your donor.
Mm,
And so oftentimes what I find in my own personal experience and with the individuals I work with now, nonprofits think that I just have this one set of customers and it's the beneficiary and everything revolves around them. And yes, they are extremely important. They're why we exist. We're trying to make the world a better place in some way. We also have these donors, and they are of equal importance. And it's only when the entire organization, comes to the conclusion that the donor is every bit as important as the service user that true transformation begins.
mm,
And so it is all about the donor feeling like they are impacting or working directly with the beneficiary. And oftentimes it's about getting the organization out of the way.
mm.
So it's
Well,
about feelings. It's about feeling like being an insider, right? I'm an insider. And that's what we did at International Justice Mission. We created this idea that I am an insider. I am part of every rescue and every restoration.
mm. And you're getting out of the way, as you said, as an organization. You're saying, no, you as a freedom partner in the case of International Justice Mission, you are a part of this. You are doing this. And that's so powerful when we think about how do we connect the donor story to the not just, it's not about the work of the organization at that point, it's actually connecting them to, in this case, the survivor or the individual.
Exactly.
I love that, and
Yeah.
I talk a lot about, what does it look like to create a human connection, and it's fairly natural if you have like a sponsorship program, because you literally, it's like, oh, I can see them, I can write letters to them, etc. But it's more difficult when you don't, and so I'm curious, thinking about your time at IJM, or even some of the subsequent philanthropic work you've done, like how can you connect individuals to the beneficiary?
Well, I think there's a number of ways. Um, it's about the way that you write and the not just the ask, but the impact. Doing those report back on a person not just once, but maybe 2 or 3 times over the course of a year, 18 months. It can be as simple as, including photos.
Mm-hmm.
It can be Penelope Burke. I don't know if you're familiar with Penelope Burke, but
A little bit of her work, yeah.
yes, she did a great study where she found that merely inviting donors to an event makes them want to be involved, feel that they're important, whether they attend or not.
Yep, and that's the thing. It's like, and I was just literally, Tina, you'll love this. I was talking to an organization yesterday, a client, and we're working on their event coming up, and they're like, "How do we get younger donors and new donors to the event?" And I said, "Well, people come to events because of who invited them. So how can we get just a little army, maybe 5 or 10 people that are say, I'll be a host, I'll invite." And to your point, and I need to follow up with the client with this. Even if they don't attend, you have like created a level of engagement and interest and with the cause. I love that.
Absolutely. And so that was one of the things that we did, right? We had home parties. We had, whenever there was a major donor gala in an area, we would do a Freedom Partner luncheon during the day. And we would invite
Okay.
freedom.
And invite the Freedom Partners to come in and have a special private luncheon. You probably already had the venue. We got the
Exactly.
gala happening tonight. Come to the special pre-event. Did you do anything? I mean, that in itself is special, but keep unpacking that.
Yeah. And so we would have, you know, a special person from the field who happened to be speaking that night would do a shorter appearance. Someone from the office, it could have been a private investigator, and you know enough about IJM to know that, they are never photographed, they're never
Right.
seen. So to be able to have lunch with someone like a private investigator, that's instantly special. And we would just really just love on them, tell them how fabulous they are, how incredible they are. This is the difference that you're making. We just want to honor you in this small way by providing lunch and coming together. And do you have any questions? And so, a major part, I would say a good 20 to 30 minutes of the event would be allowing them to just ask what's ever on their mind and going in that route of whatever they happen to say.
Yeah. I love that. It creates community. It is an actual benefit, but and again, even if they can't make the special, VIP Freedom Partner lunch, that in and of itself is a blessing to the donor and makes an impact. I love that.
Yeah.
Um, so I learned a phrase from my friend Tina many years ago that I've actually used quite a bit, and that is you've described sustainer giving as, I hope I'm remembering the phrase correctly now that I say this, but cash consistent, recession resistant. Can you unpack that for us?
Yeah. So first of all, the shorthand is C squared R squared.
Ooh, that's pretty. You know me, I love a good math equation, but okay, cash
Yeah.
consistent C squared and recession
C
resistant R
squared
squared.
R squared. Cash consistent, recession resistant. So, that was one of the things that really helped get the idea across that we needed to invest in sustainer giving because if you have an amazing core group giving to you every month, you can begin to plan ahead with your budgeting,
Mm-hmm.
with your programming. It's freeing. It's freeing. And I had 3 budgets when it came to the Freedom Partner program. There was a budget for acquisition, there was a budget for retention, and there was a budget for innovation, which was
Okay,
not
so the
part of
three were, yeah, so the three budgets were what?
acquisition, retention, and innovation. And by having a retention budget, I was able to show that it actually costs less money to keep a monthly donor than it does to always be acquiring one.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this misnomer sometimes with executives that once someone comes in as a monthly donor, they'll just stay forever. That is not the case, right? You always have this trickle out effect for whatever reason, and they can be really good reasons. So you always have to be pulling people in to make sure that you sustain, play on words, but then you also need to be pulling more in so that you're growing because you want to be growing constantly. It's not enough to just sustain. So you have an innovation budget. And in my way of thinking, it may be 5 to 10% of your fundraising budget, but there's an agreement that there is absolutely no return on investment on that budget. It is simply to try new things so that you can go to the edge of the market and see what works and what you can tweak. And another thing for me is I think learning should be a KPI in every organization and that learning should be documented because it's all about that 1%, right? I may tweak something so that it
Yeah.
gets a bit better it performs better. So
The cumulative effect of innovation and optimization. And people think that, with recurring giving, especially these days, since it's such a rapidly growing space, and you really saw that before that moment, there still is that temptation to say, like, what's the silver bullet? What's the one tactic that I can do? And don't get me wrong, there are some tactics and strategies that are, have an outsized impact, but it's that 1% at a time. It's doing, I was just on a webinar speaking with some folks, and I said, your recurring giving program, I believe, is just as deep a rabbit hole as your major gifts program. It's just as deep a rabbit hole as your annual fund program. It's just as deep a rabbit hole as your planned giving program. Any of these fields, you get into them and you realize, oh my gosh, this is more than just a superficial, set of strategies. It's a deep rabbit hole, right? And so how can we think about that with our recurring giving? And to your point about there are many different things you can do, you do have to actually have the discipline to really treat it as its own full-fledged thing.
I agree. And I will go one step farther, Dave. I think that you have to be in it to win it. I think that you have to be so dedicated to it that, one of the reasons why I was successful at International Justice Mission is because for 3 years we said, this is our number one fundraising priority.
Okay. Absolutely. Okay. Keep going.
And this is what we are inviting people to be a freedom partner, no matter what level they're giving at. Now, we had a minimum level, and it was always that amount or more. It never went out just as that amount. It was always or more.
We need to talk about. It's not about, it used to be, in certain programs where you're actually sponsoring a child, maybe there's like a cost per whatever. But yeah, and let's jump to talk a little bit about why or more, because your average gift, I'm guessing, was not $25.
No, we asked for $29 or more. And when I left, our average gift was $59 a month.
Yeah. And I mean, just to jump to it, because some fundraisers are listening to this, asking the question to themselves, what about mid or major donors? I mean, you didn't ask them for recurring gifts, did you?
Absolutely. Yes, we did.
Oh.
It was all teams going after freedom partner or monthly donor gifts. And all right, if you were a major donor, and we had major donors in the freedom partner program, they were freedom partners first and foremost because they chose to be a freedom partner. They had a major donor advisor walking with them who would ask them for a bigger gift. And the way that I explained it to the major donor team at the time was, if I am wealthy enough to go out and pick up $1,000 handbag, it's no brainer for me to give $500 to $700 a month. And so asking them is more like, oh, sure. And it'll have no impact on your major gift. And we found that to be true.
Yep. And I've seen the same, and even more recent statistical data on looking at cohorts by giving size and giving level. The conversion to recurring giving only increases total giving. So it's not like, that's the worry I'll hear from clients that are the middle or major donor team is, what is this going to do if somebody chooses to give on a recurring basis? Is that going to suppress the $10,000 gift or the $100,000 gift at the year end? And I have not seen any data to suggest that. It's only, and if you think about it, just logically, it's like, oh, they're that much more bought into the cause. They're thinking, it moves you kind of, in some ways, I would imagine it moves a major donor up the list of like charities that are close to their heart.
Completely. And you never know who's hiding in your file, right? And so we had a family who were giving $5 a month. They were not freedom partners because you weren't a freedom partner unless you were giving $29 or more. But they were giving $5 a month. And so we took a look at everyone who was giving lower levels, and we started to up our communication, our walk with them, not asking for more, but just giving them more information, inviting them to different things. And we noticed within a few months they had upped it to $20 a month. And when we did our big Freedom Partner campaign every September, where everyone asked for Freedom Partners, there was no single dollar ask. It was all become a monthly donor, all the teams.
Hmm.
They became a Freedom Partner at $35 a month. I invited them on the Freedom Partner trip because at that time, International Justice Mission did an annual Freedom Partner trip to one of our field offices. And the Freedom Partner paid for the trip. So I want to make that
Yeah.
clear. They were thrilled to be asked. They were thrilled to pay and to be able to go in a small group to visit an office, to sit with survivors, to sit with the people who were doing the work on the ground. When we got back from that trip, they upped their monthly gift to $5,000 a month.
Okay. Wow.
And she told me the story at dinner one night while we were in country of how they had started out giving $5 a month to 20 different organizations because she wanted to see who was going to pay attention. We were the only ones that did.
Wow. That is incredible on so many levels, but it just on one of the levels is it just goes to show that, as people are engaged with the charity, if they're really actually treated well, and they have opportunities to go deeper. In this case, I couldn't think of a more deeper way to go for a donor than to say, oh, I can actually go on a trip. As a dad, I think about, we have our kind of radar on with our kids of like, by the way, nobody has invited me yet to go to any field. So hint, if you're a nonprofit and I'm a donor, but like we would totally do, and we would pay our way because it's like a profound opportunity for our family to experience the work. And to your point, uh, it did cost you, but it didn't cost you because the donor is the one that chose to do it. And you can just see that journey of generosity from 5 to 25 to 35 to 5,000 is incredible.
Yeah. And, not everyone has the ability to do that. But again, you never know who's hiding in your file.
Yeah, that's really good. Okay, so that was great. And this may be the answer to the question, the story you just told, but I have a feeling you've had some other experiences, but can you share a moment when you really saw the power of recurring giving in action?
Are you thinking about the if event, Dave?
I think, let's go there because you and I, that's spoiler alert for anybody who read the book, that I talk about a gathering that I was aware of called the If Gathering. So tell us a little bit about what the If Gathering is. But I want you to, and then I want to draw some lessons out of that for event-based fundraising, because I do think events are one of, if not, and I haven't decided yet, they're one of, if not, the best channels for recurring giving. But you didn't know that 9 years ago when this event happened. So tell that story.
Yeah. So, If Gathering was an incredible annual event that was held by If, and that was a non-denominational women's group bringing women further into the Word of God and into community. And they held an annual gathering. And my boss actually knew some of the If team. And she came and asked me and said, do you think it would be worth trying to see if we could get freedom partners from something like this? And I just, being the entrepreneur, went, yes. Well, how do we do it? We'll figure it out. If they say yes, we'll figure it out. We'll do it. And I had two incredible people on my team who both had entrepreneur spirits as well and were totally dedicated to freedom partners. And so If Gathering took a chance on us. They really did. Because it was new to them, too, to ask someone to do something financially at an event, at a gathering of women who were there to be drawn closer to Christ. So we had a speaker come in from the field. But before that, we put our, thinking caps on, and we sat back and we said, how can we create an experience, not just be at the event, but create an experience that will bring women to the point where they want to make a monthly commitment. Because we're not just going to ask for a one-time gift. We're going to ask them to be a freedom partner and to walk long-term with us. I hope it's okay to say this. I prayed about it. Boy, did I spend a lot of hours in prayer over it. How do we come up with an ask, with something that feels like I am making the difference in one person's life? And, at that point, it was all about, you would go to a concert and you'd be asked to sponsor a child.
Yeah.
How do we break through that? And I felt led to try and create 5 packets based on real individuals who had been rescued from some form of slavery by IJM. And it was a sleeve with the picture of the individual and a pull-out slip to sign up, right? So it was really low key, Dave, really low key. There was a web address on it, but our little troop of volunteers, we put those sleeves underneath every single seat in the auditorium. We prayed. We had a booth where we were already talking about being a freedom partner. We had testimonials at the booth from people who were freedom partners. And again, really low key. I mean, we didn't have a lot of money to do this. We had the incredible Ellie Holcomb, who was singing at that event, who we got to spend some time with backstage, who, when she heard what we were doing, her heart was touched. And so I think she sang in a different way, right? Because she really understood. And then our speaker went out and talked about rescuing women and children from slavery in India. And we prayed backstage, and we prayed not knowing. And we had volunteers who, after she made the call to give, would be standing at every single exit with lovely decorated baskets for the women to put their commitment cards in. I mean, so low key, Dave. And we had no idea. We did not know what would happen. And there were people back in the office that said, yeah, this is going to be a waste of money. You're taking a big team there. Don't see it, working. And praise God, it did. We got thousands of women signed up to be freedom partners.
Are you looking to build a thriving recurring giving program but not sure where to start? I want to introduce you today to the Sustainable Giving Self-Assessment. Developed from years of research and thousands of hours of experience, this short assessment is for nonprofit leaders and fundraisers who want to build a long-lasting stream of sustainable recurring revenue. Go to sustainablegiving.org to take this free assessment. It's just 30 questions and takes 7 minutes. Afterwards, you'll receive a personalized report on the state of your recurring giving program and what areas you should focus on. Are you ready to get clarity on how to grow sustainable giving? Go online and take the assessment today at sustainablegiving.org. It wasn't just the speaker. It was the fact that from stage that really the cause of saving women from trafficking was like a part of the content of the event. Like, it didn't feel like and now, and correct me if I'm wrong, it didn't feel like and now is the advertisement moment. It was like, no, this is a event about empowering and connecting women, and this is an opportunity to empower and connect women, right?
That is 100% true. And we actually had that agreement before we agreed to be part of the event. We were very, very focused on the fact that it couldn't be a sales pitch. It couldn't be, and now this is the moment. It had to feel like a natural element of the entire weekend.
Well, I've told you this story since, but for our listeners, little did you or I know, because we hadn't met yet, but my wife was sitting in that auditorium. And Tina, I don't know if I've told you this story personally, but I'm going to tell you now. And that is, she came home fired up. The event was incredible. They did a wonderful job. She was so moved. She was there with a group of friends, but she was fired up about the work of International Justice Mission. And guess what I found out when my wife got home, Tina, that we were some of the newest freedom partners to International Justice Mission. And I think that story is so important for multiple reasons. It does show the power of in-person moments and how it's, you can send a million emails or do a dozen TikToks or send text messages, and those are all channels we can use. But when you have an audience of people that are in a space and you can align your cause, that's the point I want to make. You can align your cause with the purpose of the space, whether that's a concert or a gala, or in this case, a multi-day event for an audience, and you can align the purpose with the cause. It's amazing what can happen.
Absolutely, Dave. Absolutely. And, I think it's important to note that while the year overall for Freedom Partner acquisition was not as high as we had hoped, even with that incredible story, because we were taking learning really seriously, because we were notating and updating teams that were helping us. This is what happened. This is what we learned. This is how we're going to tweak it in the future. And we were archiving those things for the people who would come behind us. Don't know if that's still happening, but that's what we did for 5.5 years. I can tell you that from someone who's still there, that channel of bringing freedom partners in through events, last year actually was 30% of the revenue.
Wow. And you said that all the way, as
if it had stopped at year one because it wasn't what we thought it would be, the organization would have missed out on the possibilities.
I think that's so important. I was just talking to a leader, and he actually wrote down, I wonder if I have my notes on what he said, but here it is. Consistent effort over time produces the best results.
Yes.
And I thought, oh my gosh, that is so true, because we're all guilty. We're human, of like, what's the silver bullet? And the first time we do this, I hope it works, especially when you're like literally innovating something new. And I think the beauty of that story, Tina, on multiple levels, but one of the pieces that's really beautiful to me is the fact that you hadn't done it before. And so you had to it was a blank slate. Now, you are a fundraiser, you've seen other event fundraising moments, and so you weren't, ignorant, but you said, how do we make this a part of the DNA of who IJM is? We're storytellers. The fact that you had a survivor telling her story is so powerful, right? And your foresight to say this needs to be a part of of the event. That's way more work than, please give us a 5-minute ad slot and we will, show up the day of, phone in our 5-minute ad slot and then go to the next event. I do think there was something to how well it was integrated. And I've met people, by the way, Tina, in the years since. This was almost 10 years ago. I just did the math, by the way, as donors, and I do not say this to brag. But because we're not major donors, we're not middle donors, right? We are your everyday annual fund type donor. But because of that moment, almost 10 years ago now, I just looked, and literally in I think it was the last month as we record this, we gave our 3,000th dollar to International Justice Mission.
Oh, Dave, that's beautiful.
And like I said, I don't say that to brag. I just say that to say that's 20, whatever. I don't remember how many dollars a month it is when you do the math. But we've appreciated the report backs. We felt drawn enough into the mission to continue to give over the years. And that's the beauty of sustainable recurring giving. People are a part of the cause. They tend to give extra gifts, by the way.
Yes.
You can talk about that. And so I'm so glad to actually hear the story firsthand because it's impacted my family and our lives and our kids. But I think it's also a benchmark for other fundraisers here a decade later. And so thank you for all the investment in doing that.
Oh, it was, I think, a calling, and it was a beautiful, beautiful thing. There were great learnings to it. And like I said, I had an incredible team. And I really think that, when you've got an incredible team and you are asking God to lead, incredible things will happen.
That's great. Okay, I want to talk a little bit because you've been doing a lot lately around the area of creating philanthropic cultures. But before we leave events, because we really, I think that's a really important thing. If you were coaching a nonprofit leader who wanted to launch an event-based acquisition tomorrow,
Mm.
where would you tell them to start?
Oh, goodness. First of all, you have to have the right people on the team to be able to do that. They have to be go-getters. They have to believe that what they're doing is the best thing since sliced bread. They have to exude confidence and excitement. Um, I think that you need to either create an event or find an event that meets the values of your organization. Don't just go anywhere. I really think that it needs to be something that meets the values of your organization, because the people attending need to have the
Values
values
of the
of your
organization.
organization.
That's really powerful. Well, and that's the cool thing is some organizations actually are sitting on, they do events and they don't even think about that. I had one small charity that I work with here locally that does an open house twice a year, and it's a local residential program that, by the way,
Mhm.
works in the area of trafficking here in the U.S. And so they work actually with survivors. So similar cause, but very local. And they were getting ready for their next open house. So not a fundraising event, just an invitation to people to come and see the work and meet some of the social workers and hear some of the stories. And so what they did, and this was like just a couple of weeks before, we said, hey, what if when the executive director gives their update, a couple times throughout the day, we actually make a bold ask and say, hey, we are looking, we this work is incredible, and as you can see, the stories from today is so needed in our community, but the need is an ongoing one, and we're looking for the X number of of generous individuals to stand with us to help us to make this impact. And at the end of the day, Tina, again, very small organization, they said, how'd we do? Like, what did you think? And it's like, well, number one, this wasn't a fundraising event. Number two, you don't have a recurring giving program. So this is not exactly the ideal way to start. But in that one day, this small local charity, Tina, I did the quick math. They generated over $10,000 of long-term value, a 5-year long-term value from just that one half day non-fundraising,
Yeah.
last minute kind of thing. And I don't advocate for last minute, but the point is, those were people that clearly shared values. They were coming to an open house to hear about the work, and even though it wasn't positioned as a fundraising moment, people of course stepped up, and it makes sense in hindsight. It makes sense. It's scary, ahead of the time to say, oh, we're going to ask them, what do we do with that? And people want to be a part of the work, and they want to feel like they are making that impact, and they are. And that's the reality and the beauty of sustainable giving.
Absolutely. And I would go a step further and say many people are waiting to be asked,
Mm,
and they don't get asked because of our fear.
yeah.
And
Ooh.
I think that when we really believe that our mission is valuable and is something that is really changing the world in a positive way. And we don't see fundraising as mere money. We're far more prone to be comfortable asking.
Yeah. You just reminded me of another story of an organization I'm working with. This is a college oriented, group oriented organization. And one of the things we're talking about is, what does it look like to live a life of generosity? And they've seen, again, small organization, but they've seen in the past 6 weeks, their small recurring giving program, because they said, okay, we're going to focus on this, has more than doubled. And so it's like, yes, let's celebrate that. But the thing I'm just as excited about, and we just talked about with their team, is how does this actually exhibit what it looks like to live a life of generosity? Not just for the donors, the parents of students or the grandparents or whatever who are giving, but the students themselves. Like, this is such a pivotal time in their lives. And that's what we talked about this charity does, is really helps with the formation of these individuals. And so this isn't just a transformation. Let me say it this way. This isn't just a fundraising tactic that, maybe helps keep the lights on. This is like a transformation, not just for donors, but for the people in the program, for the staff. And I'm so hopeful. I think they're on the right path, that this is more than just getting to a bigger number on the revenue line item, although that's helpful too.
Oh, always. But you're right. It is about generosity. And, one of the things that, this is personal. One of the things that my mom did when I was young, like, 7 years old, was I got 50 cents a month, 50 cents a week for allowance. So really dating
Real
my
chore money.
my money, 50 cents, 7 years old. But with that, I had 3 banks. She went out and bought me 3 banks. And she said, you have 50 cents. That means a nickel goes in the bank for Jesus as tithe.
Yeah.
And another nickel goes to give away to whatever you want to give to. We'll find something that, you want to give to. And so every week I divvied up my money that way. And I think that small things like that and start to breed the concept of generosity into the child with their own money.
Absolutely. Yep. Our girls know, the phrase for us, and we didn't come up with it, we learned it somewhere else, was give, save, spend. Like, what are we doing to give? What are we doing to save? And then spending comes last, just so you know, which will be hopefully helpful when they get to their adult years. So that is really powerful. Okay, so one of the things that you've really been honing in on for the last several years is just, what does it look like to build a supporter or donor-centric philanthropic culture? Okay, so that's a lot of syllables, and I love syllables. But, so you've said organizations should see themselves through the eyes of their donors. What does that practically look like?
Yeah. Well, so I mentioned that you have one governance structure and 2 businesses in every nonprofit. And we spend a lot of time, usually, really knowing our clients or beneficiaries, what they need, what their world looks like, feels like, smells like. We tend to not spend that amount of time with our donors. And I think that, a donor conscious culture, which is where I sit, pays equal time. And it's not just with the development team, it's with the entire organization, understanding that donors are people. They're an extremely important part of the mission, as important as the beneficiary. And actually, what we need in order for the donor to feel fulfilled and excited about walking with us comes from people who are not on the development team. And therefore, they need to understand who the donor is, what the donor needs, what the donor would want to see and hear about, because 9 times out of 10, they're the ones gathering it. And they're not, quote, on the fundraising team often.
Hmm. So how do you help leaders and teams make that transition? That's a cultural change, right? And it can be uncomfortable or unfamiliar.
It is a huge cultural change. Everything with the work that I'm doing right now is based on the academic research by Adrian Sargent and Jen Shang, and their great fundraising report.
I am very familiar with Jen and I just were speaking at a conference in Seattle a couple months ago.
Yes, they are fantastic people. In fact, fantastic academics. They have made such a difference in the nonprofit fundraising culture. And um, we do something called the Great Fundraising Masterclass, which is 3 partial days. We really dig into that great fundraising report that was done by Adrian and Jen. And we also have more than 350 case studies that we talk to and keep up with all the time. And so we put all of that together and created this class. And it's real life stories. It's real life moments, and of organizations that have attained the status of great fundraising. And that really has a culture that goes along with it. And then we also work deeply with boards and executives to help them understand what that looks like, what that feels like in an organization, and the changes that have to occur for that transformation, which will lead to incredible revenue growth. We've seen it over and over and over again, and it's can be anything from 200% to 1,000% over a 5 to 10 year period. So
Hmm.
just by changing your internal culture.
I want to keep drilling down into this just for a minute. I know we're
Sure.
we're near the end of our time, but when you talk about creating a culture of, help me with the language. What language should I be using?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we talk about great fundraising organizations,
Hmm.
and you want to have a donor conscious culture.
Okay, donor conscious. So, um, like we've just talked about with sustainable giving, is a deep rabbit hole, I'm sure. And knowing Jen personally, it's a deep rabbit hole for sure.
Yeah.
And Jen Shang, by the way, and Adrian Sargent, just to say clearly for our listeners, definitely look up their work. I'm sure it's a deep rabbit hole. Obviously, I have a 3-day course that infuses that information. But can you just give us a taste of what a donor conscious culture looks like?
Yeah, I'll do my best. So it is remembering the donor in all of your systems everywhere, right? So everyone in the organization has an elevator pitch, a fundraising story to tell. Everyone in the organization, they could be a driver. Everyone in the organization understands that everyone around them is a potential donor. I may not ask you to give directly, but everything about me and how I talk about the organization is reflective on whether or not the person listening might be interested in giving to the organization. It is about all the systems in the organization being, all of the forward facing systems in the organization being donor focused, meaning when I'm building a CRM system or I'm building a credit card processing system, I am creating it in such a way so that it is easy as possible for the donor, even if that means it's 3 extra steps in accounting.
Okay. That's so helpful. If you follow business, kind of common, not it's not really common wisdom, but really successful businesses, the idea of being completely customer centric, shaping everything. Amazon's a classic example. Some days I don't think they're as customer centric as they used to be, but that's a separate conversation. But this idea that we obsess over the customer, and to your point, many charities, the donors and the beneficiaries are not the same. Sometimes they are, which is kind of a fun moment, right? If your charity exists to do education, or you're a local museum, you actually do have the advantage of having your donors and beneficiaries being very similar, if not the same. But what you're saying about how do we get people to not just think about the beneficiaries, but we are just as passionate about being donor conscious or donor centered, I think is really powerful. And to the extent that we can, obviously the fundraisers probably respond to that pretty well, but to the extent that the executive director and the program team and the day-to-day staff inhabit that culture, it sounds like that is just really a recipe for transformation.
Absolutely. You've nailed it, Dave. And of course, there's more to it than that. But yes, that you've got it. And, we have stories. I mean, I have a story, right? If we have time. Do we have time for a short story?
Let's do it.
Okay. Just on the elevator pitch. And again, this is an IJM story. We were doing a gala in Orange County, California, and we had a junior member of the fundraising team. I mean, really junior. And we were at a hotel, and she had her IJM badge on, and she got in the elevator, and a man got in with her and said, "Hey, what are you guys doing in the ballroom? What's IJM?" And in 14 floors, she was able to explain to him in such a way that, unbeknownst to her, he went straight to his hotel room and started doing his own research on what International Justice Mission was. A week later, a FedEx envelope arrived for our founder that had a letter in it from this man. And the first thing he did was he applauded that young employee for being able to explain to him in 14 floors that he needed to know more. He had to know more. And oh, by the way, the next time you're in Orange County, could we have lunch? Because I'd like to know more, and a check for $500,000.
He would definitely like to learn more. Wow.
You can just imagine he had to be Orange County very quickly. But this is what I'm talking about when you have a donor-conscious organization.
And you tell those stories, those become a part of just like, Zappos, who now is owned by Amazon,
right. It was a great organization.
Zappos tells the story of, going above and beyond and ordering a customer, having pizza delivered to a customer's house because they mentioned they were hungry or whatever. Like those stories, one, they're real, but they also help send a signal to the entire team that, to your point, everybody could be a donor, but we are donor conscious and we are donor centered as much as we are beneficiary centered. And for organizations that have that real understandable separation, those are not the same people. That's really beautiful.
Exactly.
Oh, that's great.
And I go a step farther, Dave. I could be a beneficiary. I could be a donor. I am meeting two different emotional needs by those two processes. Therefore, I need different experiences around those moments.
Yeah. Oh, let's do another episode on the power of moments, because you and I know we both can appreciate the importance of that in the work we do and the connections we have with others. So, Tina, this is so good. I'm going to ask you one last question. So, and we're going to talk about sustainability in fundraising. But if you could give one piece of advice to a nonprofit leader about growing sustainable giving, what would it be?
Oh, Dave, this may be controversial.
Oh, good.
If you're working with an agency, don't let them talk you out of sustainers because they want to keep the one gift a month contract. I'm
going to double click on that for a second. Having been at an agency for many years, agencies want to grow stuff, like that's hopefully, if they, hopefully they're growth oriented. But there is a concept, and I touch on it in the book, and I call it the sort of single gift mindset. And that is, this goes for the annual fund team, this goes for the agency. There is this kind of, and it's very subliminal because it's like, no, we're doing fundraising. It's like, no, we're asking for more single gifts. And that is different. And that's not a bad thing, by the way. I don't think either of us are casting shade on single gifts. We want single gifts.
No.
But recurring sustainable giving is a different thing. So you have your major gifts team, your plan giving team, your single gift team. I don't think anybody calls it that, but a lot of times it is the single gift team. So what does it look like to make sure that not just your staff, but your vendors, your agency is aligned? I think that's so powerful because especially having been in an agency, when you're accountable to those single gifts and you have numbers that the CFO said you need to hit, you're like, let's make sure not to risk that. But to your point, when you can take, in the case of IJM, multiple years to say, nope, we are going to be sustainer first. That at 30% of revenue is an incredible, resilient, sustainable, cash consistent, recession resistant way of doing philanthropy and of thinking about generosity. And it transforms donors and it transforms the organization. And so I think you and your work, both at ADRA and IJM, but also since then with the many, many organizations you've coached and taught and workshopped, are a beneficiary themselves.
Thank you, Dave.
It's so good to have you, Tina. And where can people, we'll put some links in the show notes, but where can people find you if they're just looking for more of what you're up to?
Yeah, they can find me at philanthropyfundraising.com.
Okay.
And they can find me on LinkedIn, Tina Hudgins.
So grateful for LinkedIn. So we'll put those links in the show note. Thank you for just investing in who you are and the journey that you've been on and the different intersections that you've had and the teaching that you're doing for others. Not just around sustainability, but around that broader culture of philanthropy. So thanks, Tina.
Thank you, Dave. It was a pleasure to be with you.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Sustainable Giving Podcast. I hope you found the information helpful and that you're able to walk away with some powerful tools that you can use to start building a steady stream of recurring revenue for your organization. For more information about the topic and to take the Sustainable Giving self-assessment, visit us online at sustainablegiving.org. While you're there, you can pick up your copy of The Rise of Sustainable Giving, your guide to growing recurring giving. And hey, would you do me a favor? If a person comes to mind that you think would benefit from this episode, would you mind sharing this episode with them? Just that little act could be the difference that they need to start growing sustainable giving for their own organization. And there's one other thing that you can do that would be a huge blessing to me. I've timed it and it takes just 16 seconds. Would you consider rating the show? Just head to the show page on the app of your choice, and if you've enjoyed this show, hit the 5-star review. Bonus, if you want to leave a comment, I would love to hear what you think. Special thanks to the entire team at Imago Productions for bringing this show to life. Abigail, Christine, Grace, Kirsten, and Tom. This would not be possible without you. Until next time, thank you for joining us and keep inspiring generosity.